What is up, guys? Welcome to a brand new video. Every patch we look at new champions in Korea that are doing a lot better in the hope of kind of finding new strong picks. Basically, there are champions who are always like the top win rate and most popular in Korea, but those are the ones that I never talk about because they aren't new, right? But today we're going to go over those champions so you can kind of see who really dominates in Korea and is very like consistent and reliable to climb with. Let's just get straight into it, and I guess we're going to start with the AD carries. Yes, okay, I am kind of biased, but I think it's interesting how this isn't really the same over here. So the way we're going to do this is like have the overpowered champion and the most popular champion for each role. The overpowered one for AD is actually Twitch. He normally floats around top 2 every patch for win rate, which is really high. Even when like Jhin and Ashe were super broken, right, he was still 3rd, so he does really well over there. Now most of you are probably going to be thinking it's because he's aggressive, right? You find people, catch them alone, bend them over, and Koreans love that stuff. I probably should have phrased it differently, okay? Not so much like the loving of the bending over part, but like the individual plays and stuff. Whenever I'm watching these, I like to think of it kind of like there's no I in team, right? That's the kind of phrase that everybody uses for teamwork, but actually there are 3 I's in individual and they play hard themselves and try and carry. Now actually what they do is they play for his late game. He's still good early, still does well with that snowball, but it's more about the late game team fights really. Like he's normally number 1 actually for games that last past 35 minutes. I doubt many of you expected that. One thing to note though is Blade the Ruined King is actually very popular in Korea. You have the percentage damage on your ultimate which applies to everyone you hit, especially with runes and stuff. It's really good, but we just don't see it very much over here. The most popular one is actually Ezreal. I mentioned this a few times actually, but Korea just like really love Ezreal. It wouldn't surprise me if they have like posters of Ezreal in their bedrooms. Like it's really insane. Even when he wasn't that good, right? Before like the blue build existed, if you can remember that far back, they would still play him anyway, even when he sucked. So he's kind of seen as like the solo carry champion. You can do a ton with him and he's decent at most stages of the game. You can win lane if you play it properly and hit your mystic shots. You can do well mid game and even late game as well. Over here he is popular as well, especially this patch with the arcade skin that just came out. But literally in Korea, like number 1 AD in almost 50% of games. That means if you played 10 games, right, and you didn't play Ezreal yourself, on average 5 of the opponents you'd play against would be him. Like that's pretty dumb. It's more abusing his mid game though, so when you have like Iceborne and Muramana Transform, that's when they really fight and they go completely nuts really. So let's go to the top lane next, because again a little bit different to what we expect to see over here, and I'm already waiting for the meme comments, but Pantheon is the most consistent overpowered top laner in Korea. No, I do not have a fetish, like legit, he actually is. He's normally 1st or 2nd in win rate and top 10 popularity as well, and they don't mess about like at all. Ignite is almost always a summoner choice to play and just like crush lane as hard as you can. His power points in game are actually kind of funny because he has almost a 60% win rate if the game ends before 25 minutes. That is like broken, but then about like 56% before 30, still busted, 53 before 35, and then he falls off massively. The thing to remember though is a lot of these losses will also be him trying to go balls deep and failing like big time. It's like he has no off switch when you play him. Everyone has that friend, right, who just goes into a pub and they drink like way too much every time you go out, and whether it ends well or not, they're still gonna do it. And that's basically a Pantheon player in a nutshell. Like they keep fighting and either crush or get crushed. So the most popular is EKKO by a mile. Actually, he's only played in 20% of games over there. I say only, like 20% is a really high play rate, but he's banned in about 20% of games as well. So that's kind of like 40% together. 615 was about 6 weeks ago, I think. So that was when the Triforce build actually came in and kind of started off. He went from like the top 5 pick rate to number 1, like immediately. To give you an idea, on average, right, if you buy Triforce, Deadman's, and Visage as your first 3 items in that order, you stand about a 60% chance of winning the game in Korea. That is insanely high for the most popular build on a popular champion. So we see him a bit differently, but over there he's kind of seen as the most reliable carry champion, I guess. EKKO does a ton of damage with Triforce and Fervor, but he is just really tanky. So yes, Koreans love their damage, they love to carry, but ultimately they want to win, and they're usually a lot better with comp stuff than we are in solo queue. EKKO fits because he has damage, he can carry, so he ticks those boxes, but he also frontlines for your team, so fits into any comp. That's why I think he's so popular, honestly. He's just one of those champions I see a lot of people saying like he's not strong, he's bad, look at his win rate, but actually if you're good with him then you can win a ton of games. Now I want to actually talk about support next. So I know I normally leave them until last, but again it's very different. Silent support is actually the overpowered one here, so it's kind of weird, right? I mention him sometimes, but he's always like top 2 or top 3 win rate in Korea. Not very popular though compared to all of the others here in this video. At the moment Silent is like the go-to kill lane. He does a ton of damage, he takes forever to kill, and he has a lot of crowd control and engage. Most of his wins are going to be coming from early leads actually. Like late game he doesn't really offer that much at all, like not tanky enough to front line, crowd control is okay but nothing special anymore. Early though the base damage is very high, your crowd control means a bit more in the lane phase, and you can just like charge at people with your ult as well, knock them up and do a lot of damage. When Jhin was overpowered, he was really strong because he's so good. With him, they can chain crowd control like monsters, but he's still good with anyone who can go slightly aggressive. The criteria for these champions, by the way, on this video in general is like at least 4 or 5 patches where they are dominating. Sion, though, has been literally almost all season long at the top. The most popular support everywhere, I think, is Thresh, so I'm going to ignore him, and if we're ignoring that one, we're actually looking at Alistar in career. He's in almost 20% of games that you'll play, which is very high. More than anything, it's the playmaking potential, so you can flash Q, W backwards, set up team fights, set up dives. Career likes to be very aggressive, remember, right? Alistar probably sets up stuff that better than anyone else, really, and it's kind of the thing we said earlier. They want to carry and win games. Alistar can literally carry terrible teammates by setting everything up. He can engage or protect depending on what your team needs. But yeah, so the big things that are different, I guess, with Alistar in career is the career dives way more, and Alistar is really good for it. Like, they will dive all the time if they get the chance to. They're more aggressive in the lane phase anyway. Alistar can engage and start fights. It gives time for the AD to kind of follow up. When I don't understand a pick, I normally watch a few replays from career, and their lane phases when I stalk are so interesting. Like, they never stop fighting at all. In Europe, at least, like, we're much more chill and laid back. Even at high elo, like high diamond, we don't really fight that often, and they also roam a ton more as Alistar. Like, they go to mid and just try and kill people all day. Now, mid lane is next. There's kind of 2 overpower picks we don't see very often, and that is Aurelion Sol and Karthus. Now, Aurelion I just talked about in my last career video. Basically, he's been solid at high elo for like months, but never at lower ranks, so I kind of just didn't mention him. But this patch, he's a lot better in gold and below, so I did. Because we've already gone over him, we're going to talk about Karthus for this one. He's basically always top 5 in career, like for months. He's always been there. He's pretty decent. He's not the most popular at high elo at all, but he's probably a bit more popular at lower elo, I think. And it's funny because I see Karthus as a hyper carry, right? You can do a ton of work late game. Well, actually, he wins most of his games that finish early than he does late. It's kind of weird, but it comes down to like if he gets fed early. A fed Karthus early means you get your items earlier, you reach hyper carry status earlier, and it's just a much easier game. That's kind of the dumbed down version, at least, of like how he works, I guess, but he does a lot more damage early than you think he does, and it's more like a snowballing Karthus is just so hard to deal with and stop. The most popular mid laner in career, though, by far is Victor, and it has been for months now. He's almost got a 20% ban rate and like a 25 to 30% play rate. That is ridiculously high for such a diverse role. If you think about it, mid has probably got the most variety in champions, but he's still super popular. Like, a third of the time you're going to pick Victor. He's very similar to EKKO, actually, that we just talked about. Like, you're never going to show as overpowered on like stat websites because so many people play him, but he's just such a solid pick. You can literally never really go wrong with a Victor. Actually, there is one kind of time that he's just not very good, and that's if the game ends before 25 minutes. Like, you have a horrible win rate, you don't really do anything. He needs items really to get going, but as soon as you got them, like, he shoots back up to being good. He does do basically everything though, like long range poke, wave clear, good team fight, sustain damage, and burst as well. He's so well rounded, and I think that's why career just love picking him. You can never go wrong. Build wise, there are so many different combinations though. Rylai's is basically core though. Abyssal also extremely good and very popular. What a lot will actually do is I'll rush Abyssal so they can survive the lane phase, Rylai's then, and then upgrades their Hex Court to full afterwards. That way you're tanky, you do damage, and you stand more chance to reach kind of late game. So finally, we're onto the jungle then. I left this until last because it's probably the most similar to EU and NA now, this patch at least. Nidalee is the most overpowered jungler though, had the #1 win rate for like the past 2 months or something stupid like that. Also with the top 5 play rate as well, like in over 10% of games. She has got a lot of nerfs recently, right? But career definitely don't seem to give a toss at all. Like, you can tell why though if you look into it. She has the #1 win rate pre 30 minutes, still very high before 35, and then she does kind of fall off quite heavily afterwards. Now, most Korean games are going to end before 35 minutes, to be honest. They prefer like faster pace, gank heavy, carry style of gameplay rather than sit back and farm. Nidalee is amazing at this, as we already know, right? If you're good with her, then you can do a massive amount of damage, and the jungle role, I think, in Korea is probably one of the most important because of this stuff. They impact every lane so heavily. They don't farm very much at all, but they just gank and try and get their lanes ahead. Nidalee has the damage you need to carry, the mobility to get across the map and affect all the lanes, so just about everything you could ask for, actually. Finally then, the most popular jungler is Graves, and it's not even ignoring Lee Sin, by the way. Lee Sin is actually second. In almost every single region, Lee is always the most popular, so for someone else to hold this, like, that's a pretty big deal. We're talking about most popular as in like 30% of games Graves is played, which is ridiculous, and it's been like this for months as well. In EU and NA, it's kind of catching on more now, but only recently. His win rate has got like steadily better and better to a point where but this patch he's actually contesting the top spot with Nidalee, which is basically unheard of over there. He does similar things to Nid, honestly, but is more balanced overall. So like not quite as strong early, but still good, but it's not all or nothing. Like you can still do things later into the game as well. Almost everyone goes Sunlords though. They are a pure carry starter player, none of this bruiser stuff, and the build is actually, I guess there are a lot of builds that are doing okay, average I guess, but it's this new warrior into Ghostblade into Dustblade that is so strong at the moment, and that is massively boosting his win rate. If you build those three first, right, you normally win around 66% of games in career, which is ridiculously high. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I kind of wanted to just share these really as they're so good and popular, but they don't fit into any of my other Korean series. But anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I'll leave you with the robots.